Grab your favorite drink, whether it's a coffee, cocktail, or tea, and get ready. It's Ladies' Night on Lady Overlander Radio. Lady Overlander Radio is sponsored by Artemis Overland Hardware, Midland Radio, Go Treads, Overland Spices, Wildland Coffee, Timbo Tusk, the Moore Expo, and Adventure Trail Outfitters, maker of the Overland Shower. Hey Arla, hey girl, hey.
Hey girl, hey. What's shaking?
How you feeling, girl?
Fantastic. You like my manly voice?
Yeah, she's getting over a little bit of sickness. I was sick a few weeks ago when we did our last show, and it was just like, ugh. So excuse her if she goes on mute and has to cough it out and stuff because she's getting over some yucky stuff. So, yeah. So I had a really fun weekend I wanted to talk about really quick. I went camping throughout Florida and did the Florida Adventure Trail with Cottywomple Overland and Down South Outdoor and Off-Road. I said their name right. And that was a really good time. So if you guys haven't checked out the Florida Adventure Trail, you need to because it's a lot of fun. And it goes down near your current neck of the woods, Tara. So it goes down into Citrus County and stuff. So it's really cool. But anyway, I digress. Tonight we're going to be talking about a pretty important topic about whether or not you should take a firearm with you when you're traveling or camping or overlanding or whatever you want to call it. Whether or not that's a good idea. We're going to talk about some safety precautions you should take, some legal aspects of traveling with a firearm and things like that. And we have our special guests are Tara McGovern, Rove and Reverie. We have Christina Luppi from Huntress Off-Road and Taylor Abney from Taylor Abney Adventures. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us. So the first thing I'd like to do is, just because some of you haven't been on in a while and stuff, just do a quick little brief background on yourselves. We'll start with you, Tara, and then we'll go to Christina and then Taylor.
Got it. I'm Tara, Rove and Reverie, most social media things. I guess, what kind of background do you want? Just off-road wise, I do a lot of overlanding. It's myself. It's primarily, so I'm either solo or with my two kids, which is where the firearms and weapons tend to come in as far as being a necessity. And currently in the middle of moving across to Colorado in the next week. Holy crap.
Ooh, next week.
Yeah, so big move and changing states and then more overland adventures for the rest of the year, hopefully.
Awesome. Very nice. Christina?
So my name is Christina, aka Huntress Off-Road, on all of the social media stuff. So Instagram, Facebook, I think TikTok, even though I'm never really on it because I think it's stupid, but whatever. So,
I'm with you.
Entertainment right there.
I've yet to join the TikTok bandwagon.
So I have a Jeep. I full-timed with just the Jeep for 7 months, overlanding the entire country, which was amazing. And then added a motorhome to the adventures, towed the Jeep behind the motorhome. And then now I have a fifth wheel as base camp and adventure out of the Jeep. So it's been like a whirlwind of not having a house for literally years and just like living in the outdoors and being on the road. So that's kind of like my thing and how I got into the overland space. And also, as far as the firearms thing is concerned, there's quite an extensive background with firearms that I'm sure we'll get into later. So, yeah.
Right.
Taylor?
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. So I'm a full timer, and I don't know what you want to call it, if it's like an RV or whatever, but basically it's a cargo trailer conversion. And I've been full timing for coming up on 3 years now. So the first year and a half was solo, and then I met my husband, and so we've had about a year and a half together. So it's been awesome. And I mean, I was hell bent determined when I moved on the road to keep my 4Runner, because I worked for Toyota for almost 7 years, and I was like, that was my dream truck. Like when I got the 4Runner, she was my baby. So I mean, I literally typed the codes in to order it. Like, I conceived that truck. Like, she's like legit. I could say it's my baby. So, but
That's awesome.
anyways, yeah, it was pretty cool. And I guess the employees, like, they can't really do that anymore. So, anyways, I digress. I off-road, I shoot guns. I do so on a somewhat professional level. I could say that because people pay me to do that, which is so weird to think, but yeah, it's awesome. So I mean, I have my I do instruct, I teach as well, and I do competitions all over the country, and I conceal carry like everywhere. And I'm totally psyched about this conversation.
Yes.
Great.
I am too. And what's cool about this is, so a lot of months ago we had a ladies roundtable talking about whether women should overland solo, right? And that seemed kind of controversial. You know, a lot of people had a lot of opinions on that, and we talked through everything else.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, I'm sure that I'm sure Tara, you've gotten some comments about you shouldn't be doing that by yourself and all these things, you know, and I don't know if anybody else has gotten that, but you know, I've gotten comments on videos about, oh, well, you weren't prepared because you didn't have this and that. And they have no idea what I have in my rig. I have 18 gallons of water. I have a shovel. I have hiking boots. I have recovery gear. I have a winch. I have firearm. I have all kinds of equipment, bear spray, whatever. But they're assuming because I'm a woman traveling with 2 kids that I don't know what I'm doing. And, you know, clearly I need somebody's help. So
Yeah.
that was, you know, we talked through that. I think we've changed a lot of perception on that, whether you're male or female, you can travel solo and be just fine. You just need to be smart about things, you need to be prepared. And it's the same thing with firearms, I feel. You know, some people choose not to travel with firearms. That's perfectly okay. Choose to travel with a firearm. Some people use a knife instead. Some people have bear spray. Some people take a hammer in their purse. I have a friend who has a little tiny mini hammer in her purse that she takes with her wherever she goes. I have 2 friends by now.
That's new.
I mean, you should have a hammer on you no matter what anyway.
Cute little hammer in her purse that just in case anybody looks at her sideways. But
I want a hammer now.
know, I mean,
Oh, I
right?
keep them under the front.
You have the little baseball bat you could put in your car, Arla. The little tiny baseball bat.
I do have that
in
little baseball
in your
bat.
garage. Yeah, you could totally mess somebody up with that. But anyway, so we want to talk tonight about whether or not you should be traveling with a firearm. We're going to talk about safety. Thankfully, hey, Joey, we have some law enforcement people on that are watching tonight, which I'd love for them to weigh in and tell us what their thoughts are on that. Caden's one of them.
Several of y'all in here.
Welcome. And Joey. And so we're going to get into it first by talking about, I do want to get into everybody's backgrounds though. So Tara, you mentioned that you grew up kind of in a gun shop, you know, was it a family owned gun shop or what was it?
Yeah.
Or just
So my dad owned pawn and gun shops here in our county forever, basically my entire childhood and partial adult life, actually until just a few years ago. So I was raised literally in a gun shop with all of those things around me all the time. So of course the education started from a very young age of this is a tool, not a toy. And this, you know, it was never anything. I think you reached that point as I got older where, you know, all the boys want to date you because they know who your dad is. And, you know, got like full of things. They would come over to take me on a date and end up in the gun room. But
yeah,
being surrounded by it all the time obviously gives me a little bit of a different comfort factor with them or knowledge of them than most people have. So I do recognize that, like, it is not a natural thing to be that comfortable around all of those weapons all the time for most people. So yeah, my education in them was pretty much ingrained from childhood, from that factor.
Okay. Yeah, I got a lot of I didn't ever shoot a firearm or handle a firearm until I went into the military. And so when I was in boot camp, that's when I was trained on how to, you know, all the nomenclature, how to properly handle them, how to shoot them, everything else. And so, you know, I had that background, and though I didn't shoot, you know, a firearm often, I only to qualify while I was in the military, I didn't, you know, I still retain that information, and, you know, I think that that's important. But Arla, what's your background? Do you have have much of a background on that, or did you just learn when you were young? And
not really. My parents, they had a few firearms. We never went and did any shooting or anything. But when I married my husband, he, did a lot of hunting and whatnot. So he kind of got me more started on that. I would say, but yeah, always carry. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Christina, tell us about your background.
Okay, so it started, I grew up in a very hunting oriented family. So my father was blessed with 3 daughters and no sons. And I started hunting at a very young age, and my father and I spent a ton of time in the woods together. So when I was a young kid, I think I had my first gun when I was 7. And we just in the whole firearm safety thing had been ingrained in me since the beginning, just because my father had a whole collection of firearms, and I, being in the woods with him, it was important to him that I understood firearm safety and everything. So that was always ingrained with in me from a very young age. But then as I got older, so I started, I had to take hunter safety classes, and then I enjoyed that so much that I actually became a hunter safety instructor. And then it sort of transitioned into I loved the classes so much, and my favorite students were women because most of them had never even shot a firearm before, and it was their first time. They got so excited, and so I decided to become an instructor. So I got certified as a firearms instructor, pistol and rifle courses. I lucked out because growing up in New Hampshire, we have Sig Sauer that's actually manufactured in New Hampshire, and they have an amazing training facility in New Hampshire. So I got trained at Sig Sauer.
Nice.
And then passed that along. So I got certified to train women's firearms classes and started doing women's firearm safety classes for pistol, rifle, and I even included archery sometimes just because it was fun. And then I moved forward with doing more work with fish and game. So I kind of combined my firearms training with my passion for wildlife and the outdoors and everything. And I've had a concealed carry permit since the moment I was old enough to do it. And like I said, the big thing for me was as I progressed through all of those training classes and really enjoyed them all, I just wanted to go further and get other people into it. So I also became a range safety officer and got certified as an RSO, and went through the whole thing because for me, it was just important that while I enjoyed all of that, I passed that knowledge along to other people. So everybody else who's on the range with me is also being super safe, and everybody else who's out in the woods carrying a gun is also super safe. And just wanted to kind of pass those skills and that passion along to people.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Taylor, tell us about your background.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I'm still totally freaked out that Christina and I went to the same high school.
That's crazy.
Shut up. How weird is this?
Yeah, we had a little combo before the show started, and they went to the same high school.
And have never met each other before.
Not the same years though.
That's crazy.
You're a generation, a block ahead of me.
Ouch!
But, well, I mean,
shots fired.
Not a generation, a
literally,
high school generation. Shots fired.
Is that a couple of years, or is that
I'm gonna go get a little stroller for her, a little walker. I don't know.
Oh, wow! 30 years old. I doubt I could have had you. Okay.
Wasn't that just
high school generation.
So this show just took a weird turn, but all right, let's move along.
Let's move along. So no, when I was listening to your story, it was just cool because I'm trying to figure out where we might have seen each other, because with Sig Sauer being right there, I never knew how special it was until you really start seeing people fly in from all over the country, and it's whoa, and it's just in our backyard. And that culture in New Hampshire is just live free or die. And firearms are just really not a controversial topic, or at least they weren't when I was growing up there. But I mean, I didn't grow up with guns like you guys. So I love that y'all did, because I totally didn't. I grew up in like inner loop Houston. And then my family moved to New Hampshire, where it was rural. And when I had moved out on my own for the first time when I was 23. And it was in a town in Salisbury, which is like just off of exit 17, if you're driving up 93 North. And there's no police department. So that's when I bought my first gun. So that was in 2013. And I mean, it just like clearly spiraled wildly out of control because like fast forward, however many years later, and I'm a competitive shooter. I'm on Team Winchester, and I shoot for a lot of other really awesome companies as well on a national level. So that's most of my experience was either like, again, done through adulthood, but done so like literally under the timer. So I started competing 6 months after I bought my first gun. So that's like what I've always done. And so I actually don't have a lot of experience in the quote unquote recreational or hunting realm. I've done a little bit of hunting, but most everything has been competition. And so like Tara, when you were saying, most people aren't used to being this familiar with guns. Like in the competition world, we totally are. And I do forget that maybe it's not as normal, but it's like, that's just what, yeah, like I go over to a girlfriend's house and it's like, she also has loose ammo rounds in her junk drawer. And I'm like, I'm glad I'm not alone,
Yeah. For having a bag of ammo in my middle compartment in the Jeep because they did not think like how dare like I put it randomly, like of all the random things coming out of my compartment, there was ammo stashed in different places in the Jeep because like it's got to be within arm's reach. And so I got yelled at for that was a bunch of men left comments on my choice of storage of ammo places. That was
it happens. And when you're in a freedom state,
like I forget it's there.
But you're moving to Colorado, so watch out.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I live on the
a little different, but I do know that. Yeah, I have heard that I don't follow the news a ton, but I have heard that a lot of states are removing the concealed carry permit requirements. So I think Florida is one of them where they're pushing to not have not require a permit to concealed carry, which is interesting. And we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. I was just bringing it up because I just thought that was interesting. That's been in current. What's that, Tara?
That's the last thing Florida needs.
Well, that's probably true, but there's a lot of things that the Florida doesn't need that they do anyway. But it's just interesting. And so one of the things I'd like to talk about is traveling through different states. And, every state has a different requirement and there's different reciprocity with different states. If you do have a concealed carry, some states require you to have the gun locked away. Some, you can have it on you. And so I think that's just something that people need to be aware of when they're traveling with a firearm, especially if they're from one state and they're traveling 3 or 4 states over to go camp or overland or whatever, that people may not think about. So, I mean, have you guys had any experiences where you've been traveling from state to state and maybe you've been stopped by someone and somebody said something to you? Or Christina, did you have that experience?
I have had that experience. Fortunately, I was prepared for it because I knew, traveling between state boundaries and everything. But just very recently, actually, over Christmas break, I happened to be in New Hampshire for Christmas, which since my permanent address is technically still in New Hampshire, my ID is from New Hampshire, my vehicle's registered to New Hampshire, everything's still technically there, even though I spend the majority of my time out west now. So I decided I was going to buy a firearm while I was in New Hampshire for Christmas because I have a lot of relationships with the guys who sell firearms in New Hampshire. So did that, picked up a brand new handgun, but I was traveling from New Hampshire to Indiana right after the fact. And on the way between New Hampshire and Indiana, we got pulled over. And it was like nothing egregious. It was like a construction zone thing, just something stupid where the speed limit kept fluctuating within 10 miles of each other. But it was a situation where I was asked specifically, are there any firearms in the vehicle? And that was actually, believe it or not, the first time I've ever been pulled over that the officer specifically asked me the question, are there any firearms in the vehicle? And I said yes, they're outside of arm's reach. There's no ammunition in the firearm. The ammunition's in a separate compartment. Like everything is done according to like the rule book. Essentially, the gun was locked in its own case, and I was prepared for the question to be asked, basically, and I was glad for that at the time. I do have, because again, like traveling as much as I did, I think in 1 year I was in something like 38 states or something. And during that time, I chose to purchase a firearm that was legal to have, not necessarily concealed carry wise, but legal to have in my vehicle in all 50 states, which was really difficult to actually choose and find. But there are, in my case, it's a shotgun. And it only holds 20 rounds, and it's got a certain length of barrel to it, and it has a certain kind of stock, and like everything meets the legal requirements for all 50 states. So I had to kind of, when I was traveling, especially solo, when I was traveling by myself, I had to kind of specifically prepare for those instances and those situations. So there's a way to do it, and there's a way to do it right. It's just that there's so many things that you need to look into and be prepared for beforehand.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely have to do your research.
For me, I mean, I think I was just also always raised and trained with, if you get pulled over, it's like first, before anything else, as like before I even handle my license, it's, hey, there is a gun here, and this is where it's like Christy said, like
absolutely.
This is where the gun is, this is where the ammo is, and just giving them that information up front usually completely changes your dynamic with them, period. Never had a problem. They're usually just like, okay, I got pulled over in Wyoming last summer, and I told them, and he's like, okay, and it just moved along with the next thing.
He's like, everybody here has that, girl. Like everybody.
But never a problem. Yeah. So never a problem with it. I just always am prepared for that question, and knowing that that's like first information that goes out, as soon as they come up to the window.
Well, yeah, and I definitely think that it's important for officer safety as well, and a few police officers watching tonight. So I believe, I'm not sure, maybe they can correct me on this, but I believe that when they pull you over, if you do have a concealed carry permit, I think that it tells them that you have a registered firearm and a concealed carry permit. So they already know. Like, if you legally have a firearm, they already know you have one. So, again, same thing. I tell them right up front, hey, it's here, it's locked up, it's whatever, just to avoid any kind of issues or confusion or anything about that. So I just think that's a smart way to be. And Kate shared here different gun laws, reciprocity maps, and guidelines. That's fantastic.
I use that exact same link, and it's extremely valuable. They keep it pretty well updated. So I definitely recommend the same one.
I would say the most useful tool has been the USCCA app. It shows you all the reciprocity. You can literally like plug in, what license you have as a resident, and then all of your out-of-state licenses, and it shows you. And then you could click into each state and be like, oh, if you get pulled over, do you have to disclose? Or, and it goes through all the laws and stuff. That was like my lifesaver, because I, like, before hitting the road, I totally jumped down a lot of like research rabbit holes, and it could be sort of intimidating because there's a lot of information that it's hard to trust. And so having one reliable source, like whatever the source is that you find, I find that like if you could find just one or two really good reliable sources, that's like key. So, and then trusting that. But I just printed a copy of FOPA, and I like always keep that in my glove box just in case, like, I don't know, I have the thought, like, if I were to get pulled over in a state that was not as firearm friendly and an officer were to ask me, it's like, okay, I have that. And then I also, like, I have the copy of, like, literally the bill that says I'm able to carry this through interstate travel. So it's like, that way there's no question.
Yeah. And experiencing Arkansas, and Kate also brought up a good point that I wasn't aware of, that when you hand over your driver's license and you have a concealed carry permit, you have to hand over your permit as well.
Absolutely.
Which is good for me to know, because I have a concealed carry permit in Florida, and thankfully I haven't been pulled over, but that's good information to have, is that you are required to present that to the officer as well. So,
but as you move and change your license for
yes,
Misty and for Tara that are both moving,
yeah,
you have to switch those both. You can't
switch it
have
all over.
two different running.
And that's why we wait
Absolutely.
to change addresses for a while.
Tara,
Well,
go
you
over to
think-
Utah and get a Utah permit. Since you're going to be living in Colorado, just go get that one.
You
Yeah.
you can get the Utah permit anywhere. I got my Utah permit in New Hampshire. It is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool when I finally went to Utah. I was like, I'm in the
Yeah.
state that I got the permit that allowed me to do so many things.
I spent a year in Utah, and I was like, why wouldn't you go do something?
Right.
Right?
Obviously, while I'm here, let's just.
Mhm.
That is an awesome license. And Florida has a really good license too, in terms of from what
Yeah.
Let you do whatever you want here. It's fine.
almost you can't open carry though,
Everything.
which makes no sense. Such a gun friendly state,
Yeah.
but they won't let you open carry.
I
anyways.
actually have mixed feelings about open carry. So
Same.
while I love concealed
Same.
carry, don't get me wrong, I feel like open carry makes you a target versus what your ultimate goal would be of protecting yourself. If there's a shooter, or imagine a mall situation where there's an active shooter situation and you're noticed with a firearm on your hip,
Right.
you're going to be the first person that they try
target.
to take out to make sure that you're not shooting back. You know what I mean? At least in my
totally.
opinion.
Yeah, they can do what they
Well,
want.
we have to keep in
So-
mind open carry means a lot of different things. So for me, and I mean, I'm totally with you. You want, concealed carry is for a reason, especially when you're a female. But when I'm hiking, with a pack, oftentimes I'm typically open carrying. It's more comfortable, and I'm literally in the woods by myself. And the same thing goes for even in Florida, I was on a lot of very remote beaches, in the Everglades. It's just more comfortable to open carry. It's hot AF. I'm in a bathing suit and I have a gun strapped on me, right? I'm open carrying. And to conceal carry, I've got to put on a cover garment, and it's hot. So, when I'm out in the woods by myself, obviously a cop isn't going to bother me, but there's still I don't know. I look out for the fish and game officer who's having a bad day. It's what's, I don't know, try to do the right thing.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned law enforcement in a federal level, because we were talking about before the show started that, I did a little bit of research. I looked up that you are allowed to carry in national forests and in national parks, but you have to still look at the state, county, city, local, whatever rules and laws about that and comply with those. And they actually supersede the federal law. So though you may be able to carry in, let's say, the Ocala National Forest, if part of that national forest is within the city limits of Ocala, and they don't allow that, then you can't. So don't just assume because some national forest or some national park says you can carry in that area, that you can, because you have to look at, and even BLM land, especially out west, there are lots of, it's just whether or not you can have a fire. So we've ran into that where some places will say there's a burn ban, there's no burn ban at the federal level, but the county's got a burn ban currently, or, you have to be smart about that stuff and do your research.
And most of park websites are pretty up to date on
Yeah.
stuff. Look for it. You can usually even just search for it in there. So most of them are pretty good, because there's times that I've been going through where I second guess. I'm like, oh, I haven't checked this one, but usually it's always on their website of what the rule is for their current park.
Yeah. So it's important that you do your research and check that. And again, knowing which states carry reciprocity, and, just making yourself as knowledgeable as possible, so that if you do get pulled over and you are questioned about something, when you're talking with some sense of, hey, I've done my research, I've looked into this, and this is I'm allowed to do this here in this way, And I think that anybody that is questioning you about that will respect that and understand that you have done your due diligence. So I would like to talk about safety, though. So when you're out and you're camping and you've got a firearm or a bat or bear spray or whatever, any kind of thing to protect yourself or to kind of slow down any kind of threat, What are some tips that you think that you could share with others that would ensure that you're being safe so that you don't end up being endangered or harmed in any way? Taylor, what do you think?
Oh, well, I was just thinking that I'm a more offensive person, and I was going to share how important it is to plot your guns in certain places, but you're thinking on a different level, so I can do that too.
So we can totally go down that road in a minute.
Wow.
For sure.
How are we going to be safe? I was like, all right, like we'll walk through this.
You and my husband would get along really well.
Yep.
Yeah.
I appreciate your take on that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're coming back to that. We're circling back to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same safety you would do at any home. In terms of having stuff locked up, I'm a big fan of Pelican cases. It's just, they're transportable. They're TSA approved, and when you live nomadically, like, you've got to have stuff that obviously is going to be secure. Like, you can't go out and get just like a inexpensive box and throw it in there. And especially when you're traveling, you have to have something that is lockable and just like durable in general. So having good storage, because you can, obviously when you're going to different areas, you're more subject to people potentially like breaking in, right? So you just want to be cognizant of how things may be exposed when you're traveling. But as far as being at camp, I mean, I don't know. I camp in the middle of nowhere, so I don't know. I just act normal, I guess.
Same.
Yeah. I don't, now I will say, so my first campground experience actually involved a firearm. So I was in I was in Georgia. I went to the state campground in Georgia, just below Savannah, and had pulled up. I was solo traveling. It was hot, like summertime. So I just literally was wearing a sports bra and had my belly band on with nothing covering it. So I'm open carrying, but I'm at a campground, no one's around. And the way the belly band looks with my sports bra, like, unless you're looking, you can't actually tell there's a gun in there because it's like same color. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway, so I'm unpacking all my setup, and this, and I'm open carrying. This guy came over and he was like, "Hey, I noticed you're camping by yourself and you're by yourself." And he said it a few times, and I'm like, I've been here for 10 minutes and I already have someone coming up to me pointing out the fact that I'm by myself. And I mean, and so that validated like why I do carry. I mean, he was walking like an old dude walking Chihuahua. I'm not worried about him. And he could see that I was carrying, but it's just like, not everyone is going to be as forward as he was. And I was thankful for that experience because he validated what I questioned in my mind in terms of like being at a campground and sitting in a fishbowl where everyone's watching you. So I would say for safety, like, just put yourself in an environment where you truly can be safe and you could control more things. You can't control your neighbors at a campground. I could totally control, for the most part, I can't control animals, but when you're out in, BLM land, public land, whoop, there goes my light. I talk with my hands. Like, you could select an area that is safe, right? So for the most part, I think. So yeah, that's my tip.
Right on. Let's go back to Katie Abraham's comment there. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I will totally jump in and be like, the moment I get to camp, and I think I just saw, I don't know who it was, but somebody just jumped in and said basically the same thing. It is on my person, like on my body at all times.
Yep.
So I prefer, personally, I'm an appendix carry type of person. So I'll do the belt, and if my jeans are a size too big or whatever, and then it fits like in the like appendix carry holster that I have, which is a hard-sided holster. So I saw somebody else said something about hard-sided holsters on here. I love the holster that I have. It's super comfortable for me. And the firearm that I typically conceal or open carry is a subcompact 9mm. And that's just like, it's the perfect thing to keep me comfortable. Like, even when I'm sitting in my vehicle with the appendix carry, I don't notice it necessarily anymore. I think I'm just so used to it that it doesn't even bother me anymore. it can be really uncomfortable for a lot of women. Like, I'm a skinny jeans girl. Like, I don't wear like loose baggy clothing other than typically like throwing a flannel shirt over a tank top or whatever. Like, it's just not really my style. So for me, like, finding a way to carry in a way that made sense for me and was comfortable for me and was also safe was the appendix carry type of style. So it's easy access for me. I know my firearm really well, and I tend to always err on the side of caution in that, like, the majority of my pistols that I have also have safeties. I'm just like, that's the girl that I am. Like, even if I'm going to carry one in the chamber, like, I prefer it to have a safety. So the majority of my pistols have them. And I just I like the accessibility of it. I like the way it feels. I like knowing it's right there if I need it. And I've come into not even so many weird situations, and Tara knows this about me. Like, I have had so many weird wildlife encounters in my time, like out alone in the woods, like camping all over the country. Like, I've had more weird wildlife encounters than I've had with weird people. So,
I can't wait to hear these one day.
so for me, it's just like, I have to have it on my person. So the safe place for my firearm for me is like the holster carry. The appendix carry with the holster, sorry. But I typically, if it's a state where I'm not allowed to do that necessarily, you can bet your ass my shotgun's in my rooftop tent, because that's the next closest place for me to keep that. And there's rules against, like, if it's hunting season and things like that, there's rules against leaning a firearm against your vehicle while it's loaded.
Yep.
So there's certain places that you can be in where you can have a firearm loaded in a certain place at a certain time with a certain number of rounds in the magazine or whatever. And like, you just have to be super cognizant of all of those things as far as where you're carrying it, how you're being safe with it, and how you're using it. But I'm like, for me, preferably if I'm in a state where I can do it, it's that appendix carry holster on my person at all times.
Same. And I can add one layer to that, is that I have my 2 kids with me, which they're not little. They're, 12 and going in 12 and 17. But for where I carry it, like, I carry it usually on that belt area right in the back of my jeans, because it's not just me that needs to reach it sometimes. There are scenarios where there is that rule of the second I'm out of the vehicle, they know where it's at if they need to reach it. If my hands are full or I am carrying something heavy and one of them needs to grab it off of me, they need to know where that's at as well, because there is the scenario where I also need them to be comfortable with that, because the likelihood of it always being me that can, there's 3 of us there. So as far as, them needing to be aware of it and comfortable with it too, and not being scared of having to pick it up. Or like you said, even in the rooftop tent, which it's always within arm's reach kind of a thing. Like, everybody always knows where it is and how far away you are from it if it's needed. So they also know that and know exactly that it's loaded if it's not. Like, they have all those kind of, because they can't carry it on them since their age, but they know exactly where it is and what to do in that scenario.
I love that you bred backup shooters.
It's awesome.
Yes.
Like, I have
the same thing.
It is. I've never heard a mom say, like, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I've never heard a mom say that before, where like they know where it is in case, like what a smart statement, because it's so true. Like, what, you might be trying to, like, if there's an attacker or whatever, you might be physically trying to get them away. And if they have an opportunity to maybe get that and help you out, wow, that's very, like, I got goosebumps. That's very powerful.
We do this hiking, as far as we always hike in a certain order, where oldest is always front, my youngest is in the middle, and I go in the back. So oldest always has bear spray, because he's allowed to always have that on him. So he always has that accessible. But there's generally knowledge of, even my youngest knows that is where that thing is for me to grab it or whatever. Everybody is, we have a system.
Totally. And I mean, and it does change the dynamic too, because like I had custody of my younger sister for a while. So I also had that role of protector, and we'd be in areas, and every now and then if it was kind of sketchy, she'd just look at me and she'd be like, give me that wink, like, you packing? And I'd be like, yeah. And then all of a sudden she'd be like, all right, like, when they know that you're like there, like you're going to take care of business if shit goes down, that also sort of builds that bond as well, and yeah, backup shooters, you're smart.
Well, and for that reason, mine is always that within, because it's something that you cannot get simpler than that for like if somebody else nearby has to use it. So that's usually what I have on me, just for that sake of I don't have to worry about them being able to not make that function.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Especially if you have younger, kids with you and stuff, and you want them to be able to do that. The hand strength and learning all of those different things that comes with time. And what's that?
I said, in a moment of panic or stress, it's got to be as simple as possible. At least for kids.
Yeah, exactly. So Arla, let's go back to Katie Abraham's statement there. I wanted to see what she said. I missed it. I always carry when James isn't around, but something else that has helped me not worry about traveling alone was taking personal protection firearm courses, operating a firearm under pressure, protecting your firearm in space, drawing and firing one-handed, etc. Absolutely. And that's one thing that I did want to touch on is encouraging people, if you aren't very comfortable with a firearm, make sure you look up local courses, go to a firearm safety course, learn how to shoot your firearm, make it to where you shot it enough to where you're comfortable with it, not careless, but just comfortable. And you're, where everything is on the firearm, you know how to shoot it, you know how to load it, you know what to do if there's a jam, that kind of stuff. And they have ladies only courses. They have couples courses. They have all kinds of different firearm courses all over the country that you can go and take. And I think that that's important. And I think one other thing I wanted to talk about. Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, so like another way too to learn is by competition. I mean, I started shooting 6 months after I got my first gun, which is a little extreme. But when you are in a competition setting, it is for all levels. They literally have, D class shooters, and then you have Grandmaster, and there is just like, A, B, C, D, everything in between. And that's for a reason. And I mean, I've had, I used to run matches and stuff, and, I've shot a few of them, I'll say a bunch of them. But, when a newer shooter comes, it's some of the best experience you could get, because of like what she said, you're under stress, you're under a timer, you're performing in front of people. So it is an excellent way to really sort of shake down those skills. And then you're also learning from people who are some of the best at what they do at firearm handling. These are competitors. These are, literally what they do is trained to do this well. And getting advice from some of those people, even if you attend one match. I've totally known people who were newer, they attended one or two, and then maybe it wasn't for them. But I'm just throwing it out there as an option. Because if you reach out to that local match director, you can look it up on Practice Score, which is the website that has all shooting competitions. It's like really awesome. But anyways, you just email them, say, hey, this is my skill level. It could be, I had one guy who had never shot a gun. I can't make this up. And he shot an entire match that we ran. It was a charity match, and he did great. That's extreme. I'm not telling you to do that. This is not what I'm telling. I'm not saying that for everyone. This is not a way to get out of shooting lessons. But what I'm saying is it's a great way to enhance your skills. So try competition too.
Well, I mean, and it's not unheard of. When I was in boot camp, I qualified as a sharpshooter, and I had never fired a gun before in my life. And they said, well, you don't know any bad habits. Like you're learning, you're not overthinking it. You're brand new to this, so you're listening to what we're saying, and you don't have any bad habits or old ways that you do things that you're bringing, forward to you. So I could totally see where somebody brand new to shooting could qualify or could do really, really well,
Oh yeah. And the thing is, anytime like we've had newer shooters, or I've ran newer shooters through, they are so focused on safety that when the RO, that's the range officer, when the RO runs them through the course of fire, they're very in tune with typically what that RO is doing. And then oftentimes if it's a newer shooter and it's not too high level of a competition, there's coaching too, because we don't want that person to do something unsafe, and we also like want them to have a fun time. So there's that too. Like we don't want you to do something like that would give you not like a safety violation, but maybe you would get a penalty when maybe you could avoid it. It's like, you know.
That actually brings up a really good point. And maybe Tara, you can probably kind of speak to this as well. But so during my time as an instructor, I found that it was the same kind of thing where like people who were new to it and had never actually picked up a firearm before, like there are no bad habits that you have to break them of. But like there's a lot of people that I find, and I still get this a lot actually, and I used to get it a lot in Hunter Ed, was people who are like, oh, well, I grew up around firearms, so I know how to handle a gun and I know how to shoot and I know how to be safe and all that other stuff. And I'm like, you know, while I respect that you grew up around firearms, I'm like, you probably have a lot to learn, because I know personally when I started taking the classes from professionals like at the SIG Academy, and when I started doing that kind of thing, it taught me so, like, I grew up around firearms and I had been around guns my whole life, but like that taught me so much more than I ever could have imagined. And new ways of looking at things and new ways of experiencing shooting with a firearm. And I had bad habits that I needed to break myself of, that I had grown up thinking were okay. And the way that they taught me to clear a firearm was completely different than what I had originally grown up with. And It was like 10 steps more than what I had originally been taught. So it really opened up like a whole new world to me in like the firearm safety aspect. So I feel like people who are like, oh, well, don't worry about it. Like I grew up with guns, like it's totally fine. I'm like, no. Do yourself a favor and take the classes anyway and go through those processes anyway, because you can expand your horizons and learn so much more than you thought that you knew, or correct behaviors that you didn't even know you were doing wrong. Like I had things that I didn't even know I was doing wrong, that when I went to the SIG Academy, they showed me a whole new way of doing those things. And I'm like, oh my God, this makes such a huge, why haven't I been doing this the whole time? Like, crap, I shouldn't have listened to my uncle's friend's best friend. Like what the And it was so great. It was so great to take those classes and to feel more confident in myself and to learn all of those new things. So yeah.
Agreed. I'm the same way. So I am actually ambidextrous, but I usually just go for my left hand for most things. So if you actually see me shoot, you'll see me shoot and do things like that with my right hand, because I actually am more careful, because it is not my lazy hand. Like I am with doing everything left-handed, because that is where I developed all my bad habits. So I will make myself do my right hand if I want to actually be accurate and pay attention to what I'm doing and not have my ABB kick in, because otherwise, like,
it is so funny you're saying that, because recently, like I have been training myself, like I've been doing a lot more left-handed stuff to sort of re-ground my, you know, where my skill level is, and to also sort of, because I learn from both sides, right? Because I'm learning a new platform right now. I got a new pistol, and part of getting a new pistol is just becoming like, you know, we got to do Zen, Kumbaya, spend a lot of range time. And, you know, what I've realized is that my right hand is just so extremely trained to shooting that when I shoot sometimes with my left, it's like, oh God, I had to learn things. Like this took conditioning. Like the finger doesn't even bend the same way. I'm like, oh gosh, I've got work to do. So it's been fun.
Well, that's
I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant, so I'm super weird.
Oh gosh, you're cross-eyed.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, but
yeah. So
and in the Coast Guard, they made us qualify by shooting with both hands. We had to shoot on one knee. We had to train, you know, switch out the magazine while we're you know, I mean, a bunch of different things. They have a whole course that they make us do, but you have to maneuver, you have to use different hands, you have to use, you know, it's kind of, it tests you a little, you know, it's not a huge difficult course, but it does make sure that you can do different things if you have that situation come up. So
that's a great test for yourself, though, honestly.
Left hand dominant, your left hand's injured. You have to
exactly.
What's that?
You're not going to get to pick your hand that you're best at and say, wait, hold on a second, I'm better with this hand. Like you're just gonna
hold on a minute. Yeah.
You need to switch hands.
I'm out.
it will make you feel more
Time
comfortable.
out.
Yeah, time out. I need to switch hands.
That's actually another good point. All my handguns are ambidextrous guns. Yes. So I specifically buy for that. So that's that's another point. Like if you're looking to get into this kind of thing and maybe you've never actually bought your own handgun before, you've never carried one or anything like that, like this was another, I hate to keep bringing up the SIG Academy because I realize it's in New Hampshire and not everyone has access to it, but like going to some place like that where I had the opportunity to even just like ranges where you have the opportunity to rent a firearm and try it out for a minute or something like that. Like I had the opportunity to fit myself for all of these different firearms that I could potentially buy for myself and try shooting them and see what worked for me and have an instructor help me through what works for me, which was amazing because I honestly didn't know, like I never even considered the fact of an ambi gun. But then when I realized that I was right-handed but left eye dominant, like it changed my perspective on the way that I looked at shopping for firearms. And also when I'm with a partner who also may need to utilize that firearm for something, especially in a self-defense situation, it gives him the opportunity to, regardless of which like hand he's able to use at the time in that situation, like it gives him the ability to also potentially be effective with that firearm. So all of my pistols are ambidextrous guns.
What about what shotgun do you use?
I'm so curious too. Yes.
Which shotgun are you? It's the current favorite. I would say I know which one's mine because it's ambidextrous. But which shotgun are you?
I have a Mossberg. It's a 500 Mossberg 525, I think it is. Or 535. I can't remember the actual numbers of the gun. I know it's a Mossberg I bought like 5 years back. But you're gonna have to be more specific. But
for me, I always prefer that Browning BPS, which is like old, but because of the way it ejects and like because I always hated getting shotgun shells in the face when I was younger, I always like deferred to that one. But same thing, my kids aren't left-handed, so like
my shotgun's a Mossberg 500 series. I think it's a 535 if I remember correctly, but in like a tactical like setup that it has, and it's like I said, it had to have a certain type of stock and it had to have a certain length of barrel. And the magazine had to be plugged to only hold a certain number of rounds. But that was the only thing that I could really find at the time that was affordable and legal in all 50 states. And that's what I was looking for when I was traveling the country at the time. Because honestly, like when it comes down to it, even if you don't have a single round in the firearm at the time, like the sound of racking a pump action shotgun is probably going to scare the crap out of some people.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So I've always carried some sort of handgun wherever I could. And then anytime I have a shotgun on me, it's a pump action shotgun because of that sound. Like no one mistakes that noise. So which I'm pretty sure is actually considered a show of force in some states and places. So that's
of course it is.
Like, even if the gun's not loaded, the action is considered a show of force if you're working a pump action on a shotgun. So yeah, there's so many legalities and so many rules to look into. And I guess that's my biggest point is like being safe and looking into the legalities of wherever you are and what you're doing. So
yeah, and that's the biggest thing. There's one big takeaway from this show tonight is I want people to make sure that they're researching what's legal and what's not, so they don't get themselves jammed up when they're traveling, through various states. And several people have mentioned making sure that you go take a firearms course and you're familiar with the firearm that you carry, whether it's 1 or 20. That you're well versed on them and you're comfortable with them. Because you don't want to get in a situation where you're already stressed and anxious, and then you're trying to figure out how to use this gun, and then you end up harming yourself or somebody you didn't mean to harm.
Right.
I think that's just important to be comfortable with that.
Christina and Taylor might have the answer for this because I don't, but I know that as far as from a learning perspective, some of the bad habits I developed actually had to do with the fact that I was taught by men, and women. And for certain guns, we do hold them a little different and in different places. like there's certain places that are a little bit more sensitive or painful for us, or like I would adjust those things and develop bad habits because of that. So if there is a way, and I don't know, maybe there is a list somewhere or a resource somewhere for women to actually find courses that are taught by women specifically, but learning from a woman how to hold it, how to use it is a little different, because we do it a little bit differently just from size and factors of where we have to place things.
And size, everything.
There's a resource from the NRA. It's called Women on Target. And I think that's probably the most widespread, like throughout the nation, women's firearm safety class. It's literally called Women on Target. It's a program through the NRA. They sponsor it. I would use caution in that it's taught by NRA certified range safety officers and pistol instructors and things like that, who I feel like the 6 Hour Academy, like those instructors were a little bit more knowledgeable and vetted a little bit harder. And
it's okay, Christina. We all understand that just because you're NRA certified.
6 Hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Chances are, if you're only NRA certified and your instructor, I love you. God bless. Thank you for doing the work that you do, but there are a lot of thuds. Okay. I'm going to say the best courses I've had different certification. I'm just going to take that elephant right out of the room and let the comment section reign. I don't care, because I know I'm right.
That's just the widest spread one that I think I'm aware of as far as being women's only. But I know that a lot of the other,
which is great, and there's a ton. I could probably like send a couple messages and get like a whole bunch of resources to include. The one I'm familiar with is A Girl and a Gun. They're a great resource, and I've heard of Women on Target. But there's a lot of there's been a huge surge of female instructors. So I mean, I feel like it would be really easy for the most part. It seems like you agree too. Yeah, I feel like there's a ton of female instructors now, which is great. And I totally I'm so happy you brought that up, because so when I was learning, there was a lot of learning frustrations, especially I'm extremely petite, and in competition, you're handling full size weapons. And there were differences. There was times when people were correcting my grip, and it was actually no, that's what, I end up wrapping some of my fingers around in a different way, because it kind of helps me anchor, right? Because I don't, I literally cannot wrap my hand around the grip, or, for a human being with a full size, mitten, they can. So there's totally differences. And learning from a woman is, if you're a fellow female, I think very beneficial. But it's important to also, I think, learn from all sorts of different people. If you can, and seek it out, and know that you're probably going to have to travel if you jump down the rabbit hole, clearly we did. But everyone, I feel like that I've ever gotten lessons from, you always pick up one or two things, but I'm biased. I like the lessons from the ladies.
I mean, I learned from men, to be honest, including the additional classes and everything that I took. So I've never had a female instructor for any of the classes that I've ever had. Mm-hmm. It was nice to become one while I was doing it. I think it is beneficial to a lot of the ladies that I had in classes. I couldn't tell you from personal experience, because I never had that personal experience. I had to, if there was anything that I needed to adjust for myself, and this was the only thing that I think I really did differently that I noticed was a thing when everyone was well, put it in the cup of your shoulder and hold your long rifle in this. I was cover your bra strap. And they're oh my God, that totally makes sense. Now I completely understand where to hold a rifle or a shotgun. Literally cover up your bra strap and it's in the perfect spot. So,
yeah, that's awesome. I'm using that.
That was something that I feel was the only thing that I was listen, ladies,
I figured it out.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that I think was different for me teaching than for any of the men that I had as instructors in my women's only firearms classes. And the guys, I used to get so many compliments on the male instructors that were teaching the classes with me, because all the women would come up to me after and be where did they learn how to teach women? And I'm these dudes have been married for 40 years.
How tall are you? Christina, how tall are you?
Oh my gosh. So I'm almost 6'1". So,
okay.
yeah.
So I think
I'm a big girl.
You got all the height.
Of like, I have the freakishly small hands where like, and most full size guns I am not super comfortable with, where I had one guy walk to me, he's like, the subcompact's useless. I'm like, not for me, it's not, it fits great. Like, you know, he's like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm like, comfortably hold on to the giant one you've got. Like, there's a difference on sizing there. I think there's a short girl factor to some of it, that it can be uncomfortable with some of the bigger ones if you're not holding them right.
Yeah, my subcompact has an extra round magazine so that my pinky doesn't like get lost, you know what I mean, which actually just elongates the grip for me, so it works. But I totally understand what you're saying, and that kind of goes back to that whole like, give yourself the opportunity to try out a lot of different things and see what actually fits the best for you personally.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I wanted to go back to a comment by Kate Adams here. She said, I don't let husbands or dads hang around when I teach. They always chime in with opinions, intimidate their wives or kids, and reinforce bad habits. Yes, I said it. So what's funny is when we had the ladies camping retreat this past summer, and we had someone come and teach an off-road safety course, recovery course, first aid, all of that. He actually said something similar. He said, I really like teaching women's only groups because you don't have, and we're not bashing men here. We're just saying that, people like to share their knowledge. If they're, they want to know how to do this, and I want to show you what I know. But when it's a male and female environment, sometimes there is an intimidation factor, especially if the woman isn't very knowledgeable or comfortable with whatever she's trying to do. She may be afraid to ask questions, or she may not feel confident enough to say, I don't really think that's right. That's not the way that, I've learned that, or, and there are bad habits that people try to teach because they have been around guns their whole life, or they've been 4x4 off-roading their whole life, or,
Yep.
and you have to be, I would say, humble enough to be able to say, you know what, maybe not all of my habits are great habits. Yeah, I may have been doing this since I was a little kid, but probably didn't always learn the correct way to do things, whether it's firearms or driving or whatever, So I do think that, not to be exclusionary, but I do think that ladies only safety courses and ladies only camping events and ladies only off-road events, and like Tara's getting ready at the end of the month to host a ladies garage day down in Tampa. Those things are great because you get a smaller group of people. You make it to where it's more comfortable for people to ask questions where they might otherwise feel stupid or feel like they can't. And so that's why I think those kind of things are important. It's just so, yeah, this, what did you say? Girls with Guns, or was that what it was called?
Girls
a girl
Taylor?
and a gun. Yeah, there's
and
a
there's
girl and a gun
and different things like, yeah, I think that those are important resources to share. And, if you guys can get me those links, I'll happily share all of those in the comments when I post all of this and stuff, because, people may want those resources, and they may be, again, that may be the one thing that's holding somebody back from going out and camping solo is, well, what do I do if feel like I'm in danger or how to protect myself,
And
So
not every
maybe they need
woman
those
like
resources.
feels that way about being in class with a man necessarily, but you know what? There's a percentage that do, and just even to like reach out to one person who wouldn't do it otherwise, or whatever, or maybe it's 5 women in the class who wouldn't have taken it if there were men involved, then I think it's worth it, because you're reaching that population of women who need to be taught in a certain way, or feel more comfortable being taught in a certain way.
I think there's a comfort level to asking questions where, and I was actually a little bit like Missy was saying about the class that I have next weekend coming up for the women shop, like 89 women instantly responded, and I left it open to bring your husband, bring your boyfriend. I have arranged to have things to distract them once they get there.
Awesome. Awesome.
The best things, and this is why I don't want the guys to feel knocked here, because ultimately we love for you guys to do these things with us. We love for you guys to be there. So one of the best ways you can support your wife or girlfriend or daughter is actually by coming to these things with them, but just doing so quietly. Like, it's one of those, like, be supportive, but learning to just wait for them to ask you is one of the best things you can do. And so I think when they're asking a woman, they're less likely to hold back a question when they're around me. I have noticed that, because, and I kind of lead with, I have no idea what I'm doing. I learned this because I had to. So like, I Like there's a necessity factor to some of it, but I still want the guys to come, and I still invite them and say, come along. I may just make sure that there's some food and distractions for them that, you know, keep them busy, or so they're not hyper focusing on what their wife or girlfriend is, you know, like there's things for them to do there too, since they already know all the things. But it's still, we like it when you guys do things with us and come and support us. So still come, but just don't talk.
Yeah.
That sounds bad.
Just let us ask the questions. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, I actually had a really cool experience. Oh, sorry. When I was teaching those women's off-road, or not women's off-road, women's firearm safety classes, is like a lot of the times the women would come home and tell their husbands how awesome it was, or their boyfriends or whatever, their dads, who knows. And they'd be like, the guys would come to us later and be like, can you do another one of those for guys? Because we also don't know shit. So
that's awesome.
It was fantastic.
Do we have a guys only class so that nobody knows we don't know that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know what? Sometimes they want to ask the questions too, but also feel uncomfortable in a group of guys that they think know more than them. So it was like, it really opened up a whole new world, including for couples where they were like, hey, we would both benefit from like a bare bones, like basics, intro, whatever. And like, let's figure it out together type of thing. So it can also be a bonding experience.
Yeah. I've seen couples shooting, like couples range nights and couples classes too, which is pretty cool.
They tend to offer a lot of date nights at ranges.
Kate Adams shared the Well-Armed Woman.
Yeah, they are a great resource. I don't know why I didn't remember the Well-Armed Woman, but they are a good resource too, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, in terms of like, I will say camping, so it's interesting. So I've spoken with several women within, I would say, like the last month or so, who like avid overlanders, but have never really like camped by themselves before, which is like, you know, it's way more common than I thought, because people get used to going out in groups, or they're always with their partner, or, you know, whatever the situation is, they just haven't gone out by themselves. And first of all, I think it's very good for you just as a human being to have that experience by yourself. And I will say, like, you know, as like someone, I think it's very human when you go into areas that are remote and you're not exactly sure what to expect, to maybe need some extra confidence from having like, you know, a way to respond to a situation. And for me, you know, the firearm was that. So, you know, my first time camping actually like totally by myself on public land was in Wyoming. And there's a whole story about that. It was awesome. It was beautiful. But I mean, it was just like, you know, you go through all these series of weird thoughts in your head and you don't know what's going to happen. And it could be an animal or a person. And when, you know, at the end of the night, if I was questioning, like, can I do this? It's like, yeah, well, if something happens, like, I can take care of it. And when you know, and it doesn't have to be a firearm, it could be anything, right? Like we have to cover all situations. But you know, if you do that background work, then you're setting yourself up for an awesome time. And people should totally, you know, and I think anyone who has that overlanding mindset, you know, you're looking to push boundaries, you're looking to push your limits and also be an independent person. And this is a part of it. It's like, you know, when I posted the story of like this podcast, like all my followers were like, is there any question of why you wouldn't carry a gun? Like, you know, I think I had a lot of people comment that. And yeah, I think that's a lot of people's mindset. And now if it wasn't someone's mindset, you know, I would definitely want to, you know, like hear those thoughts, have a conversation. And there's other tools that we should discuss as well. And my number one favorite tool is the flashlight. And the reason for that being is, one, you need it every day. It gets dark. But two, it gets people used to carrying something on them that is a tool, if you're not used to carrying something like a gun, which could be intimidating. And a flashlight will buy you time. So if something were to happen at night, whether if it's an animal, I've used, like you said, you had animal encounters. I could only imagine, you know, a flashlight is helpful. Sometimes even if you stick your head out a window and just like you could see eyes, like, and then for, you know, if you're getting attacked, that'll stun someone. And a lot of them on the end of the flashlight actually have prongs for more physical contact. So, and it sounded like someone was going to say something. So,
I would say I take that one a step further, where next to the gun in the tent with me at night is actually my remote for the Jeep. And if there's something in camp, I set the alarm off on my Jeep because all the lights go off. At that point, I don't care if there's people camping nearby. Like, you kind of want to alert people that something's wrong. So I let the alarm and the lights flash until I know whatever it is gone, because that's enough to startle, stun them, or people and animals. It's just that startle effect gives you time.
I've used that several times, and I've had it work. And one time it was just as simple as, where the hell was I? I think I was in Arkansas. I was like on the Oklahoma-Arkansas border in some weird national forest area. And probably. And there were like wild, pigs or something. So I'm in my camper, and like something is brushing like against, like there's something like chewing on my house. Like there's like shit's happening outside, And anyway, so the panic alarm like saved the day. And then, I like waited for it to be quiet for a while, and then eventually investigated and like saw the prints and everything. And I think they even left some hair. So, but that is a solid tip. Thank you for sharing that, because that has like definitely been good for me.
I mean, for me, and this sounds so flippin' cliche, but for me, like the ultimate number one is like this, because before I even have to reach for a gun, and I know the limitations of my firearms, and Tara's heard this story and Misty's heard this story, but like, so this is why my Wyoming encounter with wildlife, like I was camping outside in Grand Teton National Forest, and a grizzly bear, I made steaks for dinner the night before, which is the stupidest shit you could possibly do while you're in Grand Teton camping. That was the dumbest thing I've done in my life. I'm 100%
Don't do that.
Do not do that. I do not recommend it. So there was like beef grease outside my campsite, which was just dumb, like just pure stupidity. And so it's like 5:30 in the morning, and the sun is barely up, and I hear this god-awful grunting noise coming from like the tree line on the side of this sort of kind of like field that I'm camped in by myself. And I'm like, no firearm is going to get me out of this situation. Like, I have a 12 gauge on me, and I have a handgun on me, and the handgun's a 9mm, and the 12 gauge is going to be hilarious to this bear. So like, there is literally nothing that I'm going to be able to do other than to like GTFO. So I immediately like scrambled down. I crawled out the window of my tent, ratchet strapped the ladder up as fast as I could. I didn't even push the ladder up or fold up the tent. I literally just strapped the ladder up high enough that it wasn't going to rumble on the ground, and drove away with the rooftop tent still set up on my Jeep. So like, just your situational awareness, I think is
awesome.
One against anything that's going to be happening around you, and any sort of crappy situation that you're going to get yourself in. And I know Tara and I have talked about this before, and I think Misty's been in on the same conversation too, is like, if your gut tells you the situation is bad before it even gets bad, get out. Like, no matter what, like if you're noticing something that's a little bit off, if your gut's telling you that it's a bad situation, before you ever even have to reach for a firearm or consider a knife or think about a flashlight or whatever, just get yourself out of the situation is like my number one way of combating those things. So yeah, that was my best wildlife encounter, was having to drive away from a grizzly bear with the rooftop tent still open on my Jeep.
I want someone to make a sticker where it's just like the silhouette of your Jeep with the rooftop tent with the thing strapped up and a grizzly chasing after. Like, I want that is an epic sticker. Like, I just
How have I not done that yet? That should be my personal logo for the rest of my life going forward.
I mean, it's a badass story.
Talk to Jared at Shop Overland Apparel, and he can make that for you. He can make that happen. I guarantee it.
Yes,
I will have to do that.
Yes, you have to include the tree line.
Yourself a little bit every time I tell this story. I swear.
It is pretty funny.
Oh my gosh!
One thing I do want to mention, one of the comments that we got on Instagram on our Lady of Orlando Radio page was that they knew where we were from because we were that was even a thing, that you would bring a firearm with you camping.
Oh,
so my question is, what do people do that
I now know
travel
where
internationally?
She's from. Yeah. Oh, so
like, there's people that travel all through Australia. People that travel through South America, Central America, Canada, you know.
Or even people who are traveling.
What do these people do when they don't bring a firearm with them?
Well, that's where I come in with, like, honestly, if I carry a gun, a knife is still always my preferred. Like, I will always, I mean, in the situations that have been really close contact self-defense, the gun, I couldn't even get to that. Like, the knife in my boot has always been the more reachable, usable thing. So I'm big on, everybody kind of knows that. Like, at any point, there is always at least 3 within arm's reach on the trailer or the Jeep. Cool. So, but there's also that factor for people that are from out of the country, cannot carry guns here. And there are some alternatives that companies have put out. I keep hearing really mixed reviews on them, though. So, like, there's, you know, the pepper spray balls and guns and things like that. But I haven't really gotten enough experience with them myself to give you an answer on whether it's worth it or not.
Yeah.
And I've gotten really a 50-50 mix on good or not from my friends who have tried them. So, but that's one of the alternatives, but it's still definitely not the same.
Right.
Firearm. I mean, to me, a knife is still more useful, and properly learning how to use bear spray is also another big thing, because I have heard full bear spray cells.
I would screw that up. Like, I would screw that up.
Oh gosh.
I have heard of more people bear spraying.
Somehow I would spray myself. Yeah.
So practice with it. Most people never practice with bear spray before they are put in the situation, because you can use that on people too if you have to. Like,
110%, I wouldn't realize what the wind direction was before I sprayed it. So, like, without a doubt, I would screw that up.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
You know, another point, and Tara, I'm kind of teasing you a little bit, but you gotta, even when you're using tools and you're out by yourself, you have to be safe, because you can injure yourself, right, Tara? And you can injure yourself pretty badly. So
sounds like a story I've never heard.
Hey, you have a matching scar. Christina and I both.
The last time we talked to you, you had a big scar. Yeah. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
You just have to be safe and smart no matter what you're doing, especially if you're out there by yourself.
For me, there is always things. I have a tool bag that is well equipped with hammers and wrenches that can do a whole lot more damage than a lot of the things on my vehicle as far as using them. Like, if you carry one of the good size wrenches or hammers, that is a weapon if you need it to be.
Yeah. There you go. Jared Cook, Shop Overland Apparel. He'll design it for you.
Thanks, Jared.
I promise you, he's excellent.
As long
awesome
as
t-shirt design.
Yep. That's awesome.
So
just
Taylor,
one an extra small.
Let's go back to your offensive course you wanted to set up for everybody. Let's talk about that.
Oh gosh.
Where you should strategically place your guns to combat the woods.
Well, first of all, that would be giving away all my secrets. So no, I'm just kidding. I mean, you just everyone's different in terms of what their comfort level is. I like to have something in the places that I frequent, right? Which is, the vehicle, and then wherever it is that I'm sleeping. If you have one and you just carry it on you 24/7, that's great as well. I alternate. There's often times when I'm at camp where, it's like, maybe I'm trying to work out or something, right? So I like to have reliable places where I know that, something will be there if you need it. And it's important as well for anyone who ever stages anything, and this goes for in home, like on your nightstand, you have to practice as well, right? We talk about practice and all that. A lot of people will practice from the holster, but they don't practice grabbing off of a table, because you'll hit your mag button and then you'll be really surprised when on shot 2 you don't have any more ammo. So there's little things to look out for in practice. But I mean, my big thing is when I get to camp, it's really what you were saying before, Christina, with gut. I've gotten to the point where traveling solo, that if something just makes my gut flutter a little bit, I'll leave, because the world is such a big place and there's so many options. There's no reason for me to stay anywhere or to be around people who set off any sort of antenna when there's so many other options, right? There will be times when maybe you don't have other options, but anytime you do, I've driven through campsites in camp areas and had no reason to not like them, but left because something just didn't make me like it, right? And I want to feel really comfortable and happy with where I'm at. So that is super important, and and it took me a little while, I will say, when I started traveling by myself, to accept that intuition and to not logic my way out of it, to not say that this is crazy. You just have to kind of go into the situation saying, you know what, if that antenna goes up at all, I'm out, because that's going to keep you at a good comfort level, and chances are that's going to keep you a lot safer. So you just act like that white-tailed deer, just flip your tail and head on.
And there's no shame in that. Like, there's
Yep.
no shame in leaving and picking a different place and getting out of there, even if it feels like you're being ridiculous. Like, who's gonna care? Like,
oh well,
absolutely.
Additionally, we have the rule that if either one of my kids has the same feeling or issue with a place, which, by the way, the little one will use against me sometimes when he's really grumpy about where we're at. But
when there's no signal,
I have to teach them to trust their instincts too. So if they tell me I don't like this spot, it doesn't feel right, or something feels off, I don't argue with them. We go. And so sometimes the little one did figure out that, I don't like this spot. Then it turned to, I feel better if I'm right next to the river so I can fish. Despite the millions of mosquitoes.
That would be my
manipulators, kids.
That's right. So, but still, we have that rule with them of, like, I have to teach them to trust that gut instinct as well. So for me to tell them it's wrong isn't fair either. If I have the same rule of, like, hey, this doesn't feel right, we go. If they tell me the same thing, we go. And then they at least have less anxiety and feel like they always have that veto right.
Yeah. I noticed somebody said something earlier that they were like, hey, I'm a woman who camps alone, but I've never felt like I needed to carry a firearm where I go. And you know what? That's great. Like, if you don't feel, there you go, but rarely bring it camping. I get that. Like, I rarely run into situations where I'm camping around other people because of where I choose to be. But I will say that I don't know where this person is camping. I have no idea. But like, some of the places that I have chosen to go to and some of the places that I've chosen to camp in, and like, my boyfriend and I joke about this all the time, but it's like, desert people are weird people. If you spend a lot of time in the desert, like we do.
I've had a lot of conversation with my husband about rat desert shit that we drive by.
Yeah, so, it's like a whole new world out here. So
yeah. And what's happening too, for a lot of people who are like going out into these public lands and these BLM lands, especially around metropolitan areas, is I've noticed that there is more residential situations happening, and they are, the kind of characters that you don't necessarily want to be around. So I agree with that, the individual who commented, and I have always felt way, way, way safer being in the wilderness. And typically I'm not afraid of people. Most of my interactions have I haven't even had a lot of interactions, but I'm more concerned about animals, I guess, really, than I am about people. However,
the opposite.
and I don't go to campgrounds. Try not to, but and what's happening now is, even if you're someone like me, who I try my damnedest not to be near anyone, a lot of these public lands are getting
crowded.
They're getting crowded, and I think. And again, this is like, God, what a deep rabbit hole we could jump down, how to select a camp spot, right? Because when you are in public land, if you are someone who is just going to camp in that first mile of that forest road, like, you're probably not going to get the best neighbors, right? And so if you are willing to go maybe a few miles or even 10, like, then all of a sudden you're putting yourself in a better situation. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I hate to say it, because, like, for the record, I am a desert person. Like, we bought property in the high desert in Arizona, so like, I can say these things about people. But like, one thing that I have, and this is so sad, because like I said, I started this whole adventure. I sold my house back in 2019 and hit the road then, so it was like the COVID era, and so I've been on the road for years. But post COVID, I've noticed that there's a financial situation that's forcing a lot of people into public lands and has been causing more dangerous situations for people who choose to recreate on public lands.
Yes.
And I think that is something that I personally have noticed that I've had to be more cognizant of in recent years compared to before, is like, yeah, there were always those people who kind of took advantage of like the freedom and the like fact that public lands were cheap and things like that. But now it feels to me anyway, like there's an increase in the number of people who are forced to be in those situations and are creating more dangerous situations for other people who are choosing to recreate there. So whether it be theft or whatever, like there's just more to worry about, I think now, especially like you said, in the public lands that are outside of like metro areas and things like that, that you kind of have to be more cognizant of. So those are things that I personally noticed. And so I don't know if you guys have had a similar experience, but like that's something I've paid attention to.
Majorly this year for Washington, Oregon areas, especially I have almost 12 years of spending summers out there, and like I have all of my spots, the ones I think nobody else knows, and even those were completely taken over by drug related things going on. Like it was all the public land areas. So even just in the last 2 or 3 years, I noticed that massive shift.
Yeah.
Well, see, when I was in Oregon last summer, we were going to camp right outside of Portland in the national forest. And as soon as we got out there, we were like, no, this is not the place for us. There are way too many squatters, long-term people, however you want to say it. You know, it was just not a safe environment. My little spidey senses went up and my intuition kicked in, and I'm like, nope, I'm not staying here. And we traveled way out toward Eastern Oregon. But you have to, again.
There, to clarify, every issue is definitely western side of state. For Oregon or both eastern side are great.
Yeah. And then it's just what's that?
So, but then you start getting into the Oregon desert people, which is
they're a little quirky too. But the only times the only times I've ever had issues while camping, and we camp out pretty far, were with people. I mean, we've had cows come through the campsite, or bears, raccoons, things like that. A little bear every once, like nothing, a moose, but none of them ever like made us feel uncomfortable or scared. What's that?
You said at least your bear was little. So.
Yeah, he was little. But so we've never had that situation where we were in fear of animals. It's always been, and it's only been very few rare occasions where people have actually caused any kind of issue, but it was always people that made us feel the most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
grizzly bears will make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, grizzly bears will make me poop my pants and run. Yes, absolutely. I will drive off with my tent open on top of my car as well. Don't even play. I will totally
highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I don't care. I stay in the tent and wait for them to walk away. Like, he's fine, he's fluffy. He just
I promise I won't file a warranty claim with iCamper if I drive off with my rooftop tent up and whatever. I won't.
I only had to get as far as like I felt safe to put it like up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was it. But yeah, it's definitely been 110% over, more so than anything else. Like if I got out of a situation because I felt uncomfortable, it was either a person making me uncomfortable or just a gut feeling of like, I'm not in the right place right now to be doing this by myself. So I still think that like, while you can defend yourself with whatever means you have legally available to you, the best defense is still going with your gut or being aware of your surroundings and that kind of thing. So that is my first line of defense at all times, is like, if it feels wrong, before I even have to think about utilizing a firearm or a knife or a flashlight or whatever it may be, like before I even have to go there, it's like, just get out if it feels wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, ladies, we went a little over the hour, which is awesome. I think that this was a very, very good, was very informative for everyone. Again, thank you for everybody that watched and commented and sharing your experiences and your knowledge on firearm safety and traveling with guns. thank you, ladies, so much for bringing your expertise to this. And I value your input, and I know that our viewers do too. And I hope everyone has a wonderful night. And thank you again for